Hello, my name is Malcolm Gladwell. I'm 27 years old, and if you've happened to scroll through social media, you might have seen me somewhere, standing in the lush green fields of Montrose, Colorado, or sitting by an old wooden table, sharing simple stories about my family, my mom, my grandparents. Millions of people follow me, calling me the country storyteller. But if you think my life has always been sunny days and hearty laughter like in the videos, you're mistaken. Everything started in a very different place, a place I once called home, but now only remains as shattered fragments of memory. I was born in Boulder, Colorado, in a big house where the aroma of roasted coffee from my father's factory permeated every street corner. My father, Stephen Gladwell, was the owner of one of the largest coffee production factories in the region. He was a tall man with a warm, authoritative voice, always wearing a suit even for breakfast. My mother, Miranda, was the heart of our family. She was gentle like an autumn breeze, with warm brown eyes and a smile that could melt away any worry. My mother was a true homemaker, knowing how to turn our house into a warm haven filled with love. I remember those afternoons when golden sunlight streamed through the kitchen window, and my mom stood there, kneading dough for cookies, softly humming an old folk song. I, a 5-year-old boy, sat on a high chair, sneaking a finger into the bowl of dough, giggling when my mom pretended to scold me. Those days, life felt like a perfect painting. My dad taught me how to throw a baseball in the backyard, patiently showing me how to hold the bat correctly. He laughed heartily whenever I clumsily sent the ball off course, and I loved the feeling of him ruffling my hair, calling me my little champ. On weekends, our family would drive up to the mountains to camp. I remember those nights by the campfire, my mom telling fairy tales, my dad strumming the guitar, while I lay on the grass gazing at the twinkling stars in the sky. Those were moments I thought would last forever. But forever is a lie meant only for children. I was 10 when things started to crack. At the time, I didn't fully understand, but I could feel the atmosphere in the house growing heavier. My mom started crying more often, usually at night when she thought I was asleep. I heard her sobbing in the living room, her voice choked through the closed door. My dad was often away from home. He said work was busy, that the factory was expanding. But I saw the sadness in my mom's eyes every time he left, suitcase in hand and a strange scent of cologne lingering. I began noticing small details, the way my mom looked at my dad when he took a phone call, the way she gripped the edge of the table as if holding back something. One night I couldn't sleep. The phone rang in the living room, and my dad's voice whispered, thinking no one could hear. I tiptoed out, standing behind the wall, my heart pounding. "Don't worry, I'll figure it out," my dad said. His voice gentle, unlike how he spoke to my mom. "Just a few more months and I'll sort everything out." I didn't fully understand, but I felt that my dad no longer loved my mom the way he used to. And that realization cut into my heart like a small knife. I knew, even as a child, that my dad was betraying my mom. My mom didn't say anything to me, but I saw her wasting away. Her warm brown eyes were now red and teary, her smile rarer. I tried to cheer her up, telling her stories from school, bringing home drawings I made, but she only hugged me, whispering, "You're my light, Malcolm." I wanted to ask, to yell at my dad, but I was scared. Scared he'd get angry, scared my mom would cry more, scared this family would fall apart. And then, it did fall apart. When I was 11, my parents divorced. The arguments erupted like a storm. I remember one night my mom's screams echoing from their bedroom. "You think I don't know, Stephen? You think I'm blind?" My dad responded, his voice cold. "Miranda, don't make a big deal out of this. I'm doing everything for this family." I curled up in my blanket, hands over my ears, but their words still cut through, sharp as knives. I couldn't understand how my dad could lie so blatantly. The divorce trial was a nightmare. I sat in the courtroom, small and helpless, listening to adults argue over me as if I were an object. My dad had money, good lawyers, and sharp words about how my mom didn't have the financial means to raise me. My mom sat there, hands clasped tightly, eyes fixed on the floor, silent. I wanted to run to her, to hug her, to scream that I didn't need money. I just wanted to be with her, but I wasn't allowed to speak. The court ruled that my dad would have custody. My mom was allowed visitation, but she didn't stay in Boulder. She packed a few suitcases and moved back to Montrose, Colorado, to live with my grandparents, where she grew up, hundreds of miles away from me. The day my mom left, I stood on the porch watching her get into the car. She turned back, hugged me tightly, her tears soaking my shoulder. "I'll always be there when you need me, Malcolm," she said, her voice trembling. "Anytime, okay?" I nodded, but inside I wanted to scream that I needed her right now. I watched the car disappear, taking her gentle smile with it, leaving me with a big house that felt cold and empty. My dad didn't say much after that. He patted my shoulder and said, "Everything will be okay, son." But I knew nothing was okay. The house, once filled with laughter, now echoed only with my dad's footsteps, the ringing of the phone, and a silence that weighed heavily on my chest. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I had done something wrong to make my mom leave, to make my dad change. I didn't know that this was just the beginning of a bigger storm, one that would sweep me into painful years where I had to learn to survive in my own home. Just a few months after my mom left, the door of our house opened to welcome a stranger. Brianna walked in, dragging 2 oversized suitcases and a smile I couldn't decipher. She was young, much younger than my mom, with glossy blonde hair and a sweet way of speaking, but I sensed a cold sharpness behind her eyes. My dad introduced her as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "Malcolm, this is Brianna. She's going to live with us." I stood there, 11 years old, clutching the hem of my shirt, trying to understand why my dad would bring another woman into our home when the wound of my mom's absence was still raw in my heart. Less than a month later, I heard my dad announce at dinner, his voice brimming with excitement as if he were showing off an accomplishment. "Brianna is pregnant. You're going to have a little brother, Malcolm." I nearly choked, the mashed potatoes in my mouth suddenly bitter. I looked at Brianna and she smiled, her hand resting on her belly, but that smile wasn't for me. It was for my dad, for the future they were building, a future I didn't belong to. My dad started calling Brianna darling in front of me, and soon enough he demanded I do the same. "Call her Mom, Malcolm," he said, his voice leaving no room for argument. "She's family now." I bit my lip, my throat tight. The word Mom was sacred, tied to the image of my mother standing in the kitchen, softly singing, her warm arms around me. I wouldn't give it to a stranger. But every time I called her Brianna, my dad shot me a cold look, as if I were the traitor. Brianna quickly turned the house into her own domain. I was saddled with a mountain of chores, washing dishes, mopping floors, doing laundry, because she was pregnant and needed rest. I didn't complain, not because I wanted to, but because I was afraid. My dad had changed. He was no longer the man who taught me to throw a baseball, who ruffled my hair and laughed. He became distant, nodding along when Brianna complained about me, about how I was lazy or disrespectful. Once, when I spilled juice on a rug Brianna had just bought, she immediately screamed, "Do you know how expensive this rug was?" My dad just stood there, saying nothing, but his eyes told me I was a failure. The pressure grew heavier. I had to wake up at 5 in the morning to prepare breakfast for Brianna, run to the store whenever she craved anything from ice cream to pickles. If I messed up, even something small like folding a napkin incorrectly, Brianna would scold me in front of my dad. "He's ungrateful, Stephen," she'd say, her voice sweet as sugar but sharp as a blade. "He needs to be taught a lesson." My dad would nod, then turn to me. "If you don't change, I'll send you to a reform boarding school." The word boarding school rang out like a threat, like a prison I'd never escape. I knew he meant it. My dad had money, power, and I was just an 11-year-old boy with no voice. Brianna's punishments weren't always loud. Sometimes she disciplined me with silence, with cold glares when I entered the room. Once I overheard her whispering to my dad, "He's too much like his mother, always sluggish, useless." I stood behind the door, my heart crushed. I wasn't useless. I just wanted my mom, the old house, the days when I didn't have to live in fear in my own home. I started secretly calling my mom at night when my dad and Brianna were asleep. I hid in the corner of my closet, clutching the phone, my voice trembling as I heard her voice on the other end. "Mom, I miss you," I whispered, tears streaming down my face. My mom was always gentle, always patient. "I'm here, Malcolm. Come to me anytime, okay?" But I couldn't. My grandparents didn't have much money, and I didn't want to be a burden to them. Every time my mom said that, I just nodded over the phone even though she couldn't see me and said, "Yes, I'm okay." But I wasn't okay. I was breaking apart. When Ashton, my half-brother, was born, things got even worse. My dad devoted all his time to the baby, and I became a shadow in the house. Brianna stopped pretending to be kind. She called me the extra kid, saying I was just a bother to their family. I was 12, then 13, then 14, and my teenage years passed in endurance. I learned to bow my head, to stay silent, to hide my pain. I memorized every harsh word, every cold glance, every time my dad turned his back when I needed him most. I didn't cry in front of them. I wouldn't let myself be weak. But inside, I made a vow to myself. One day I would escape this. I would find myself again. On long nights, I lay in bed staring out the window, imagining Montrose, the grassy fields my mom used to talk about, where my grandparents lived. I dreamed of a day when I could run through those fields, free from fear, no longer pretending. But to reach that day, I had to survive. Survive the days of being treated like an outsider, the threats from my dad, the cruelty from Brianna. I didn't know how I'd do it, but I knew one thing. I wouldn't let them destroy me. When I turned 18, graduation day arrived like a ray of light at the end of a tunnel. I stood among the crowd, holding my diploma, but I didn't feel the joy that my friends around me radiated. They hugged their parents, beaming with smiles, while I stood alone, glancing at my dad and Brianna in the corner of the auditorium, clapping half-heartedly. Ashton, now 6 years old, sat beside them, engrossed in his phone, not sparing me a glance. I didn't expect anything from them. I had learned long ago not to hope, but deep inside a quiet fire burned. That night I made a decision. I would leave. I waited until the house was fast asleep. The clock read 3 in the morning, the silence eerie. I quietly packed my things, a few clothes, a notebook filled with my dreams, and a photo of me and my mom from years ago, when her smile still shone brightly beside me. I stuffed everything into an old backpack, my heart pounding with both excitement and fear. I didn't leave a note, didn't say goodbye. My dad had called me a burden. Brianna labeled me the extra kid. They didn't deserve a farewell. I opened the back door, stepped outside, and took a deep breath of Boulder's icy air. For the first time in years, I felt like I was breathing. The bus ride to Montrose took 6 hours. I sat by the window, watching the scenery pass by, mountains, fields, and a vast sky that seemed to beckon me. When the bus stopped at the Montrose station, I saw my mom standing there, her small frame wrapped in an old jacket. She ran to me, enveloping me in a tight hug, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Malcolm, you're home," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. I hugged her back, feeling the familiar warmth I had longed for over the past 7 years. For the first time, I cried without needing to hide. My grandparents' house in Montrose was small and weathered, with a patchy tiled roof and peeling paint on the walls. Grandpa Albert, with his silver hair and kind smile, patted my shoulder. "Welcome home, kid." Grandma Mabel, petite but sprightly, pulled me into the kitchen, pressing a plate of freshly baked cookies into my hands. "Eat, you're too skinny," she said, her eyes twinkling. The house didn't have much money or the luxuries of Boulder, but here I felt love, something I had lost long ago. Those first days in Montrose were a big adjustment. I was used to a grand house, to lavish dinners demanded by my dad and Brianna. Now I ate simple meals, vegetable soup, homemade bread, and occasionally stewed meat when my grandparents could afford it. But every meal was filled with laughter, with Grandpa's stories of the old days and Grandma's playful scolding when he snuck extra cookies. I slept on a fold-out bed in the living room, but I had never slept better. I knew I couldn't just rely on my mom and grandparents. They were retired, living on a modest pension and a bit of money from selling garden vegetables. I wanted to do something, not just to help the family, but to prove I wasn't the extra kid Brianna had called me. One afternoon, sitting with my mom on the porch looking out at the sprawling fields, an idea struck me. "Mom, I want to make videos," I said. "About life here, about you, about Grandma and Grandpa, simple, real things." My mom smiled, brushing my hair back. "If that's what you want, go for it. But do it for you, Malcolm, for your joy." I nodded, though deep down I knew I was doing it for her too. I wanted the world to see my mom, the strong, gentle woman who had sacrificed everything for me. I created a YouTube channel called The Simple Side. With an old phone and some self-taught editing skills, I started filming. My mom planting tomatoes in the garden, Grandma Mabel picking lettuce, Grandpa Albert fixing the fence. The first videos were rough, with poor lighting and crackling audio. I posted them, anxiously waiting, but they only got a few dozen views, mostly from old school friends. I wasn't discouraged, but reality was harsh. Electricity bills, internet costs, roof repairs, everything required money. I took a job at the local grocery store, working the counter from morning to night, bringing home a few bucks to help out. 2 years passed, and life in Montrose wasn't easy. There were days when rain leaked through the roof, soaking the floor, and nights when I lay awake, wondering if I was chasing a pipe dream. But my mom and Grandma were always there, like two guiding lights. "Take it slow, Malcolm," my mom said, squeezing my hand. "As long as you're true to yourself." Grandma Mabel chimed in, her voice playful. "Keep making those videos. Maybe one day the whole world will watch you." I laughed, but deep down I started to believe that maybe, just maybe, I'd find my path in these fields. My days in Montrose taught me to cherish the little things. I loved how my mom carefully picked wilted leaves from the tomato plants. Loved Grandma Mabel's giggles when Grandpa Albert accidentally spilled a bucket of water while watering the plants. But life wasn't just golden sunshine and fresh vegetables. Money was always tight, bills piled up, and my YouTube channel, The Simple Side, was still limping along with just a few dozen views. I worked at the grocery store from dawn to dusk, my hands calloused from hauling crates, but each month I barely earned enough to cover the internet bill to keep posting videos. Some nights I sat in front of my phone screen, staring at the stagnant view counts, wondering if I was fooling myself. Then TikTok came along, like a fresh breeze. I heard friends in town talking about short videos, about how they spread like wildfire. I didn't have high hopes, but I thought, what's there to lose? I started filming short clips with my old phone, capturing the most ordinary moments. My mom in the kitchen, cooking a traditional bean soup she learned from her grandmother, her deft hands stirring the pot, Grandma Mabel picking lettuce, chuckling when a butterfly landed on her nose, Grandpa Albert telling stories of the past, his warm voice resonating in the sunset's glow. I posted them on TikTok with simple captions. Country life, the little things that make happiness. I never imagined those little things could hold such power. One morning, as I checked my phone, notifications from TikTok kept pouring in. One video, a $5 meal that tastes like a feast, had gone viral overnight. It was a clip of my mom cooking a simple dinner, mashed potatoes, boiled beans, and a bit of fried chicken, all for just $5. In the video, my mom smiled brightly, sharing how she stretched every penny to make delicious meals, and I added a caption. Happiness doesn't have to be expensive. The video was shared thousands of times, then tens of thousands. Comments flooded in, "Your mom is amazing. Makes me want to move to the countryside. Keep making more, I love this." I was stunned. From a few dozen views, my video suddenly racked up millions. Viewers from TikTok started flocking to my YouTube channel, The Simple Side. Old videos, my mom planting tomatoes, Grandma Mabel teaching me to bake, suddenly gained attention. My subscriber count skyrocketed from a few hundred to thousands, then tens of thousands. I started receiving messages from all over, from people saying my videos reminded them of home, of their moms, of simpler days. A community of fans grew, not just for the food or the countryside scenes, but for the stories I told about family, gratitude, and finding joy in the simple things. I spent more time filming videos, learning to edit, improving lighting and sound. I still worked at the grocery store, but every evening I sat at the kitchen table, tinkering with each frame, striving to make everything better. My mom and Grandma became reluctant stars. Grandma Mabel, with her twinkling smile, loved to tease me. "Why are you filming this old lady? Who'd want to watch?" But she was always ready to stand in front of the camera, picking vegetables or sharing stories, as if she knew I was building something meaningful. By the time I was 25, everything had changed. Income from TikTok and YouTube started rolling in. First a few $100s, then thousands. One day I received an email from a food company offering to sponsor my videos. Then a kitchenware brand wanted to collaborate. Sponsorship deals poured in, from small brands to major companies. I checked my bank account, hardly believing my eyes. The balance exceeded $1 million. I, Malcolm Gladwell, the kid once called extra, was now standing on my own 2 feet, thanks to videos about my mom in the grassy fields. The first thing I did was fix up the old house in Montrose. The roof no longer leaked, the walls got a fresh coat of paint, and the kitchen was equipped with a new oven for my mom to cook to her heart's content. I bought my mom a car, not a fancy one, but reliable enough for her to drive to the market or visit friends. For Grandpa Albert, I got a comfy armchair where he could read the newspaper without back pain. Grandma Mabel got a new garden filled with all her favorite flowers. I didn't brag or post videos about what I bought. I just kept sharing. My mom cooking new dishes, Grandma telling jokes, Grandpa teaching me how to fix a fence. The values I learned from them, family, gratitude, perseverance, were what I wanted to spread. Some nights I sat on the porch, gazing at the fields shimmering under the moonlight, my heart swelling with gratitude. I had come a long way, from a scared boy in a cold house in Boulder to a man who found meaning in the simple things. But deep down, I knew the past was still there, like a shadow waiting to return. One autumn afternoon, as golden leaves began to fall across the Montrose fields, I was helping my mom weed the garden when I heard the unfamiliar sound of a car horn. I looked up and saw a sleek black sedan parked at the gate. The door opened, and a figure stepped out, tall but gaunt with graying hair, still wearing the familiar suit, though now it was wrinkled, no longer pristine as it once was. My heart sank as I recognized him. Stephen Gladwell, the father I hadn't seen since leaving Boulder 7 years ago. I stood there, gripping the hoe tightly, sweat trickling down my forehead, unsure of what to feel. Anger? Pain? Or just the emptiness I had tried so hard to bury? He approached, his once polished leather shoes now caked with road dust. "Malcolm," he called, his voice hoarse, as if he'd just weathered a storm. "You look healthy." I didn't respond, just stared at him, waiting. I knew he wasn't here for a casual visit. My mom stood behind me, her hands pausing in the weeds, her eyes tense but gentle. "Come inside, Stephen," she said, her voice calm but distant. I wanted to tell her not to invite him in, but I stayed silent, following her as we led him into the small living room with Grandpa Albert's armchair and the faint scent of cookies wafting from the kitchen. He sat down, his hands clasped tightly, his eyes scanning our humble home. "You've done well, Malcolm," he began, his voice tinged with awkwardness. "I've seen you online. Millions of followers, right? You're famous now." I frowned, a wave of unease rising within me. He never cared about me when I needed him most. So why was he here now with hollow praise? "What do you want?" I asked bluntly, my voice laced with caution. He took a deep breath, his sunken eyes revealing exhaustion. "I need your help, Malcolm. My company is on the verge of bankruptcy. I've tried everything, but the coffee market crashed. Competitors are stronger and... Ashton, he's no help. He just spends money, parties, destroys everything." I almost laughed, but not out of amusement. Ashton, my half-brother, now 13, was the product of my dad and Brianna's blind indulgence. I remembered the times he got everything he wanted while I was scolded for spilling a glass of water. But I said nothing, just looked at him, waiting for him to get to the point. "I want you to invest in the company," he said, his voice dropping, almost pleading. "You have money, Malcolm. You could save the factory. I'll transfer ownership to you, all of it, if you want. Just help me get through this." He looked up, his eyes full of hope. But all I saw was the desperation of a man who once thought he controlled the world. I took a deep breath, feeling as if a stone were pressing against my chest. Memories flooded back. The nights I hid in the closet crying as I called my mom. The times Brianna called me useless. The times my dad turned his back when I begged him to protect me. I looked him in the eye, my voice calm but icy. "I begged you to save me when I was a kid. You refused." Silence engulfed the room. My mom stood behind me, her hand resting lightly on my shoulder as if lending me strength. My dad stiffened, his face flushing red. Then he leapt to his feet, pointing at me. "You dare speak to me like that? I'm your father. I raised you, gave you a home, gave you everything." His voice hissed, like it used to when he wielded his authority to crush me. But I was no longer the frightened 11-year-old boy. "You gave me a house but not a family," I replied, my voice still steady. "You chose Brianna. You chose Ashton. You chose your company. I survived without you, and now you'll have to do the same." My dad trembled with rage, his mouth stammering curses. "You'll regret this, Malcolm. You think you're something, just a kid making silly videos, famous by dumb luck." But his words no longer carried weight. He had no power, no leverage to threaten me anymore. He turned and stormed out, the door slamming shut behind him. I stood there, my heart pounding, but not from fear. For the first time, I felt I had won. Not because I was stronger than him, but because I had chosen to live differently. My mom hugged me from behind, whispering, "You did the right thing, Malcolm." I nodded, but deep inside, an old wound throbbed. I didn't want my dad to fail, but I couldn't save him. Not because I lacked the means, but because he had never saved me. A year passed since the day my father stormed out of the Montrose house, leaving behind his curses and helpless anger. My life flowed on, like a quiet stream winding through the grassy fields. The simple side channel thrived more than ever. Videos of my mom cooking bean soup, Grandma Mabel teaching me to plant flowers, or Grandpa Albert sharing stories of the past continued to draw millions of viewers. I was no longer the boy secretly filming with an old phone. Now I had a small team helping with editing, a modest filming corner in the shed, and sponsorship deals from major brands. The income from TikTok, YouTube, and sponsored projects was enough for me, my mom, and my grandparents to live comfortably, no longer worrying about a leaky roof or electricity bills. The house in Montrose was now much nicer, with new windows, a vibrant flower garden for Grandma Mabel, and a cozy reading nook for Grandpa Albert. My mom had a car for market trips, but she still preferred walking, saying the breeze through the fields made her feel free. I looked at them, my mom, my grandparents, and my heart swelled with gratitude. They were the ones who kept me standing when I thought I'd collapse. Every video I posted, every story I told was a tribute to them, to the family I once thought I'd lost forever. But the past never truly disappears. One morning, as I scrolled through my phone while sipping coffee, a local news headline caught my eye. "Boulder coffee entrepreneur hits rock bottom." I clicked on the article, my heart pounding. There was a photo of my dad, not the powerful man in an expensive suit, but a weary old man, his hair almost entirely gray, wearing a tattered coat, standing in front of a construction site. The article detailed how his coffee company had gone completely bankrupt, drowning in debt. Brianna, my stepmother, had left with another man taking most of the remaining money. Ashton, now 14, was living with a distant aunt, still spending recklessly, indifferent to his father. My dad was now working as a laborer, scraping by in a rundown rented room on the outskirts of Boulder. I sat there, staring at the screen, feeling as if someone were squeezing my chest. I no longer loved my dad, no longer saw him as family, but seeing him, a man who once thought himself invincible, now broken, stirred an indescribable pain. It wasn't pity, but a pang of sorrow for someone who had lost everything. Not just money, but the things that mattered more. I brought the article to my mom, unsure of what I wanted to hear from her. She sat at the kitchen table, skimmed the story, then set the phone down, her eyes distant. "Mom," I said hesitantly, "I don't know what to do. I don't want to help him, but I don't want to see him like this either." She looked at me, her warm brown eyes as gentle as they were when I was a child. "Forgiving doesn't mean forgetting, Malcolm," she said slowly. "It doesn't mean you have to let him back in to hurt you again. But helping, even just a little without letting them harm you anymore, that's strength. That's how you prove you're different from them." Her words were like a gentle breeze, sweeping through the dark corners of my heart. I thought about those years in Boulder, the nights I cried in the closet while calling her, the times my dad turned his back when I begged for his protection. But I also thought about who I was now, a man who had found his own path, not because of him, but because of my mom, my grandparents, and myself. I didn't want to become like my dad, consumed by resentment. I wanted to be better. After many sleepless nights, I contacted a charity organization in Boulder. I offered to anonymously fund a placement for my dad in a decent nursing home, where he could live comfortably with hot meals and a clean roof over his head. I didn't want to see him, didn't want him to know it was me. This wasn't full forgiveness, but a way to let go, not for him, but for myself. One afternoon, I sat at the old wooden table in the house, sunlight streaming through the window, casting patches of light on my face. I turned on the camera as I had so many times before, but today I wanted to say something different. Sometimes, I began looking straight into the lens, you have to become the person you needed in the past, for yourself, and sometimes even for those who hurt you. Not because they deserve it, but because you deserve to live with peace. I posted the video, unsure of how many it would reach, but as I turned off the camera and saw my mom smiling from the kitchen, Grandma Mabel softly singing in the garden, I knew I had found what mattered most, a true home and a heart no longer weighed down by the past. Time in Montrose passed like gentle breezes over the grassy fields, bringing a peace I never dared to dream of during my years in Boulder. The Simple Side channel continued to thrive, not just as a source of income, but as a place where I shared pieces of my life. From how my mom baked cookies, how Grandpa Albert taught me to saw wood, to the afternoons when Grandma Mabel told fairy tales under the oak tree. But what made me happiest wasn't the view counts or the sponsorship deals. It was the way our lives were now filled with joy, free from worries about leaky roofs or piling bills. Then one day I met Elena. She was a literature teacher at Montrose Elementary, with soft curly brown hair and a smile that lit up the room. I met her at the grocery store where I used to work, fumbling to find a jar of strawberry jam for her mom. I helped her choose, and from there, brief chats at the counter led to dates under the sunset, in the fields I loved. Elena wasn't impressed by my social media fame. She loved how I cared for my mom, how I laughed when Grandma Mabel teased me, and how I wasn't afraid to fall while trying to learn to ride a horse with Grandpa Albert. We got married on a spring day, in a simple ceremony right in the field behind the house. My mom wore a cream-colored dress, standing beside me, her eyes glistening with tears. Grandma Mabel donned a quirky straw hat, and Grandpa Albert, though weakened by age, played a short guitar tune to bless us. Elena walked toward me, holding a bouquet of wildflowers, and when she said, "I do," I felt my heart expand, as if it could hold the entire world. A year later, Lily was born, our little daughter, with brown eyes like my mom's and a smile like Elena's. The first time I held Lily, the feeling was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. So tiny, she gripped my finger tightly, as if promising to bring a new spark to my life. When my mom held Lily for the first time, she cried. Not the sad tears of the past, but radiant tears of joy. "Look at her, Malcolm," she said, her voice choking. "She's the light of our whole family." Grandma Mabel and Grandpa Albert couldn't hide their happiness either, taking turns holding Lily, singing her the same folk songs they once sang to me. My life now felt almost perfect. I still made videos, but now Lily appeared in them, toddling after my mom in the garden or giggling when Grandma Mabel pretended to be a bunny. Elena helped me edit videos, and together we built the simple side into a larger community, where people didn't just watch for entertainment but to rediscover the simple values of life. The Montrose house was always filled with laughter, Lily's babbling, and my mom's storytelling. But sometimes, in quiet moments, I still thought of my dad, the man now living in a nursing home, hundreds of miles away, both in distance and emotion. When Lily turned 2, I received a letter from the nursing home. They thanked me for the anonymous funding and mentioned that my dad, though frail, often spoke of a son. The letter didn't say it outright, but I knew he meant me. I didn't respond, but the letter sat on the kitchen table for days, a reminder that the past never truly leaves. On my dad's 60th birthday, I felt an inexplicable urge. I wanted to see him, not because I needed his forgiveness, but because I wanted Lily to meet her grandfather, even if just once. I asked my mom, worried she'd object, but she only smiled, placing a hand on my shoulder. "Go, Malcolm," she said. "Not for him, but for you and Lily, to close this chapter your way." I drove to Boulder with Lily in the back seat, babbling along to a children's song, and my mom beside me. Quiet, but with eyes full of support. The nursing home was on the outskirts, a clean but modest building. When I walked into my dad's room, I almost didn't recognize him. He was frail, his hair completely white, his hands trembling as he held a glass of water. But when he saw me, his eyes lit up, if only for a moment. "Malcolm," he called, his voice weak. "You came." He looked at Lily, then at my mom, and I saw tears glisten in his eyes. I'm sorry," he said, his voice breaking. "I was wrong, Malcolm. I lost you. Lost everything." The words came late, but they still touched a small corner of my heart. I didn't say anything, just let Lily walk up to him, holding out a drawing she'd made, a house under the sun. He took it, tears falling onto the paper. I didn't promise to return, didn't promise full forgiveness. But as I left, I felt lighter, as if I'd released the final anchor of the past. On the drive back, Lily slept soundly on my mom's shoulder, and my mom held my hand, whispering, "You did it, Malcolm. You became the person you once needed." The drive back to Montrose felt longer than usual, but the air inside the car was warm, filled with soft laughter and Lily's gentle breathing. Elena sat beside me, her hand gripping mine tightly, as if she understood everything swirling in my mind. I looked out the window, watching the Colorado mountains glide by in the twilight, my heart filled with a strange sensation. Not complete happiness, but a peace I'd never known. The meeting with my dad had closed an old chapter, though it left faint scars. I thought of him, his red-rimmed eyes as he held Lily, his belated words of regret. Maybe he had changed, or at least he was trying to. But I wasn't in a hurry. Time would tell. When we reached home, it was pitch dark. The little house in Montrose welcomed us with the warm golden glow of the porch light. Grandma Mabel stood at the door, her radiant smile lighting up the night, a steaming pot of soup ready. "You're back, kids. Tell me, how was today?" she asked, her voice brimming with childlike excitement. Grandpa Albert sat in his armchair, nodding a greeting, his eyes twinkling with curiosity. We gathered around the dining table, recounting the visit, keeping to the lighter details, avoiding the heavier ones. Lily woke up, toddling around, demanding to be held by her grandma. Everything seemed normal, but a quiet restlessness lingered in my heart, as if the meeting hadn't truly ended. After dinner, I unpacked from the trip. Elena was putting Lily to sleep in the bedroom, and my mom and grandparents had gone to rest. I opened my bag, pulling out odds and ends, my notebook, my phone, and then my hand brushed against something unfamiliar. A crumpled white envelope tucked neatly in a side pocket. I frowned, wondering where it came from. I didn't remember putting it there. Had someone slipped it in when I wasn't looking? My heart beat faster. The envelope bore no sender's name, only a scrawled, handwritten note. To Malcolm. I sat at the old wooden table in the living room, the desk lamp casting light on the paper. My hands trembled slightly as I tore open the envelope. Inside were a few thin sheets written in a familiar hand, my dad's. I recognized it instantly, though I hadn't seen it in years. The once bold strokes were now shaky, as if written with intense emotion. I took a deep breath and began to read. Dear Malcolm, I write this letter during long nights at the nursing home, when all that surrounds me is loneliness and haunting memories. I've thought about sending it to you many times, but each time I picked up the pen, I hesitated. I was afraid you'd tear it up without reading. Afraid you'd think these were just the empty words of a dying old man. But today, when you visited, I slipped it into your bag. This might be my last chance to say what's in my heart. Son, I'm filled with regret. Regret so deep that I can't sleep at night. I think back to when you were little, when our family was still happy in Boulder. I taught you to throw a baseball. Your mom baked cookies and we went camping. Those moments were real, Malcolm, but then I destroyed it all. I had an affair with Brianna, abandoned your mom, and let you endure years of pain. I remember the times you cried in secret, the times you looked at me with pleading eyes, but I turned away. I thought money, the company, and a new life would bring happiness, but I was wrong. I lost you, I lost your mom, and now I've lost everything. I'm tormented by how I forced you to call Brianna mom, how I threatened to send you to boarding school, how I let you do chores like a servant. I saw you endure, saw your strength, but I did nothing. When you left at 18, I knew you wouldn't come back, but I pretended it didn't matter. Ashton, he's the result of my blind indulgence. He's not like you, Malcolm. He spends recklessly, has no ambition, and now, with my bankruptcy, he's abandoned me. I deserved that, but you didn't. You deserved a better father. But Malcolm, alongside my regret, I'm proud of you. I've followed you on social media, secretly watching your videos. You built the simple side from nothing, from those tough days in Montrose. I see you smiling with your mom, your grandparents, and now your wife and daughter. You've succeeded, not with money or power, but with love and perseverance. You're a true influencer, inspiring millions. I'm proud that you've become the man I never was, strong, kind, and appreciative of the simple things. I don't expect you to forgive me right away. I know the wounds are too deep, but if you can, please forgive me, Malcolm. Not because I deserve it, but because you deserve to live without this burden. Live happily with Elena and Lily. Keep succeeding, keep sharing your beautiful stories. I love you even if it's too late. Your father, Stephen Gladwell. I read the letter over and over, tears streaming down my face unnoticed. The words were like knives, both painful and healing. He'd written it long ago, perhaps before my visit, but hadn't dared to send it. He slipped it into my bag while holding Lily when no one was looking. I felt the torment in every stroke, the regret he'd kept hidden for years. I wondered if things would have been different had he sent it sooner. But I shook my head. The past was the past. This letter was his final gift, a sincere confession. I folded the letter, my heart in turmoil. I wanted to tell Elena to hold her and cry, but then my phone rang. An unfamiliar number from Boulder. I answered, my voice trembling. Hello? Mr. Malcolm Gladwell, this is the nursing home. Your father, Stephen, has had an accident. He jumped from the rooftop. We tried to save him, but He didn't make it. We're so sorry. We need you to come right away." The world around me collapsed. I shot to my feet, clutching the phone until my knuckles turned white. My dad jumped? How? We'd just seen him. He'd smiled at Lily, promised to live better. The letter, was it his goodbye? I said nothing, only whispered, "I'm coming." I didn't tell my mom, not wanting to cause her more pain. She'd been through enough. I rushed to the bedroom, shaking Elena awake. "I have to go to Boulder now. My dad. Something's happened. Don't tell Mom yet." Elena looked at me, her face pale, but she nodded, hugging me tightly. "Be careful. I'll take care of things here." I drove through the night, cold wind rushing through the window, my mind in chaos. Why did he do it? After seeing us, after the letter, did he think he'd said enough and could leave? I pressed the gas, tears blurring my vision, memories flooding back. From happy childhood moments to years of pain, from abandonment to today's meeting. I regretted not staying longer, not saying I'd forgiven him. When I reached the nursing home, dawn was breaking, but the autumn sunlight couldn't pierce the thick fog clouding my mind. I parked hastily, my legs trembling as I walked the gravel path to the modest building where the smell of disinfectant mingled with heavy silence. A reminder of life's fragility. A middle-aged nurse with a weary face and compassionate eyes waited at the entrance. She gently took my hand, leading me down a long hallway where elderly residents sat in wheelchairs, staring out windows with distant gazes. He's gone," she whispered, her voice choked, as if she'd seen too many tragedies. "We did everything we could, but..." My dad's room was at the end of the hall, a small space with half-drawn curtains letting in faint rays of sunlight onto the worn wooden floor. He lay there on a stark white hospital bed, motionless, his face serene as if in deep sleep, free of the worry and remorse I'd seen just hours before. His skin was pale, his gaunt hands folded on his chest, as if he'd arranged himself for this final moment. I sank to my knees beside the bed, gripping his hand, the hand that once taught me to throw a ball, that patted my shoulder coldly, now icy to the touch. Tears poured out uncontrollably, dripping onto the floor, mingling with my choked sobs. "Dad, why?" I whispered, my voice breaking like a lost child's. "You just met your granddaughter. You said you were sorry. Why did you do this? Why did you leave me again?" I pressed my face to his hand, the coldness spreading, a cruel reminder that it was too late. The nurse stood behind me, her voice trembling as she recounted. "He jumped in the middle of the night, a few hours after your family left. We heard a loud noise from the rooftop. By the time we got there, it was too late. No note, no warning signs, just the letter he was clutching, but he let it go before. We think he knew you'd find it." She handed me a small piece of paper, but I already knew. It was a copy of the letter he'd slipped into my bag. I nodded, my heart breaking, wondering if he saw our meeting as his final goodbye, if he chose to leave thinking he'd been partially forgiven. I called Elena immediately, my voice cracking through tears. "Babe, my dad's gone. He took his own life." Elena sobbed on the other end, her voice breaking. "Oh, Malcolm, I'm so sorry. I'll bring Mom and Lily right away. Stay strong, my love." She promised to shield my mom for now, to keep her from breaking down on the way. While waiting, I sat by my dad's bed, planning the funeral in my mind, a simple ceremony in Boulder, where he'd once built his coffee empire, where he'd been a powerful man. I called the funeral service, my voice robotic, listing mundane details: an oak coffin, white daisies, his favorite flower from long ago, and a grave beside our ancestors under the familiar hills. The funeral took place 2 days later, under a heavy gray sky, as if nature itself were mourning. The Boulder cemetery was windswept, with rows of cold stone graves and the damp smell of earth. Few attended, just a handful of former company employees, who once respected him but now exchanged awkward glances, whispering about the fall of an empire. Some old friends, gray-haired men shaking their heads in regret. And Ashton, now a lanky teenager, standing sullenly in a corner of the cemetery, his eyes red but holding back tears, clutching a baseball cap to hide his vulnerability. Brianna didn't show, likely having forgotten him long ago, living her new life with another man, leaving behind the memories she'd caused. My mom arrived with Elena and Lily, her face pale as paper, her eyes red when Elena told her the truth on the way. She hugged me tightly, her tears soaking my shoulder. He chose to go, Malcolm. He couldn't bear his own burden. She cried, her body trembling, but she stayed strong, stroking Lily, who was dozing in Elena's arms. We stood around the grave as the pastor read prayers, the wind howling through the trees, carrying the scent of coming rain. I stood before the grave, my voice trembling as I read parts of his letter. Not all of it, just the parts about pride and blessings. I'm proud of you, Malcolm. Live happily with your wife and daughter. Everyone listened in silence, the wind mingling with soft sobs, and Ashton stepped forward, hugging me for the first time, his voice breaking. I'm sorry for everything. I was never man enough. I promise. I'll change to be strong like you. I nodded, hugging my half-brother tightly, my heart lighter, as if an old wound was slowly healing. After the funeral, we returned to Montrose in silence, the car rolling along the familiar road. But everything felt different. I told my grandparents and Elena everything about the letter, the sudden death, the belated regrets. Grandma Mabel cried. Grandpa Albert patted my shoulder. Kid, life can be cruel sometimes, but you did all you could. The letter became a treasure, kept close as a reminder, not of pain, but of the lesson of forgiveness. Life went on. Lily grew up with her radiant smile. My channel thrived with deeper videos, but I changed. I shared more about forgiveness, about letting go, about facing loss. And every time I saw Lily laugh, chasing butterflies in the garden, I thought of my dad, of the long journey we'd traveled, from brokenness to healing, from resentment to peace. In the years after my dad's death, life in Montrose continued to bloom in its own simple, authentic, love-filled way. Lily grew into a mischievous girl with sparkling green eyes and a smile that melted every worry, just like my mom's from long ago. Elena and I built more memories. Picnics in the fields, nights by the campfire telling stories, and new videos on the simple side, no longer just about country life, but about overcoming pain and the power of forgiveness. My mom, though her hair grew grayer, remained our pillar, holding Lily and singing the old folk songs, her tears sometimes falling for the past, but her smile always radiant for the present. Ashton slowly became part of our family. He visited a few times a year, at first awkward and quiet, but gradually opening up, learning to fix fences with Grandpa Albert or cook with my mom. We never forgot the old wounds, but they'd scarred over, becoming lessons for the next generation. I often sat at the wooden table under the afternoon sun, holding my dad's letter and thinking of him, not with resentment, but with sorrow and gratitude. He taught me in the most painful way that happiness lies not in money or power, but in the simple things. Family, perseverance, and the ability to let go. Today, standing in the Montrose fields with Lily on my shoulders, the breeze carrying the faint scent of roasted coffee from a distant factory, a scent that recalls Boulder but no longer hurts, I know my journey has come full circle. Life is a series of losses and findings, of brokenness and healing. And if I have one final piece of advice to share with the world through my videos, it's this. Live true to yourself, forgive when you can, and cherish those beside you. Because sometimes from the deepest pain we find the strength to soar. And here under Colorado's vast sky, I've found my true home. Not just a house, but a peaceful heart.